All right, everyone. Welcome to KickAss Leadership. I'm Bernadette Boas. That's Travis Crutcher.
I'm that guy. Correct. I'm doing fantastic.
Good. We are trying something new today. For those of you joining in from Clubhouse, we are also streaming into YouTube and on Facebook on our Shift to Riches Today page. So you can check us out there on either one of those platforms, but we're here on Clubhouse as well. So come join us. Come join in on this conversation. We're going to be talking about stepping forward. You're the leader. This was a passion subject of yours, Travis. Any particular?
It is. You know, it's one of those things. I think it really hit me when I transitioned from the military into the civilian sector. And it was, I was raised in an environment where leaders are present, like you're there while the task is being completed. And then I go to corporate America and I see, leaders are in the office sending out an email and they wonder why things are falling apart.
Yep. And so that was the frustration for you, is trying to figure out like how the heck to get them out of the office and get them actually out there leading.
Yeah. I mean, they think that the other thing to me is an email is not dissemination of information. Let's be very clear about that. There's a big critical step called follow-up. It gets missed when you're not actually present.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things, we've talked about it before, the idea of a boss. And that really drives that point home to the subordinates because they don't ever see you. You're not present.
Right. And but isn't the subordinate, aren't they happy when they can't find their boss? They can't see their boss.
That is subordinates of terrible leaders. And the reason, so you're absolutely right. There's a lot of instances where folks are like, good, Chip's in the office, we don't have to worry about it. That's because Chip hasn't taken the time to empower his team to know, like, hey, you can ask me questions. And it's like we've talked about before. If you're a leader, you're a resource.
Right.
And it's very difficult to be a resource when you're detached from the people that need you.
No, that's true. Right. That's true. But so the stepping forward for you, is that them kind of taking responsibility and taking, responsibility to kind of step forward and do what they're supposed to do? Or is it a little bit more evolved as to what it is that they should be doing as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very asymmetrical space that you have to occupy as a leader because, we could get deep into it. You have to be there for all things. You have to be there to deconflict when there's a problem. You have to be there to insulate them from other issues coming up. You have to be there to clarify your guidance that you gave them. And it's a detriment to the team and it's a detriment to your bottom line if you're detached from that. If you're in the office, you're not there to see the thing get disconnected. You're not there to give clarification on the guidance that you passed out 2 hours ago. And so when things aren't meeting the timeline, it's really your fault as a leader for not being present.
Yeah, that's true. Now, if we were to translate that into an entrepreneur, a business owner, and let's even strip away the idea that they even have a team. Maybe it's a bunch of contractors,
Sure.
which is their team, but maybe they're even a solopreneur. So when it comes to stepping forward and taking responsibility for what it is that they should be doing each and every day, what does that look like? How do you coach and instruct, your clients as far as what they need to be doing in that capacity?
I mean, it's one of those things we've touched on it before, but it's being accountable to yourself first. And you have to take supreme ownership of the fact that, especially if you're a solopreneur, it fails or succeeds because of you.
Yeah.
And so you've really got to be in it.
Right. And you have to be willing. So even if there's a solopreneur, and from a leadership perspective, is that all, not only just the responsibility, but also the stepping forward is being willing to kind of take risks, get out of their comfort zone. And even as they're engaging contractors and they're engaging other persons that they're either paying or not paying, to help them build their business, what is their responsibility there?
I mean, you and I could go back and forth with people we've worked with who love to get stuck at the start point.
Yep.
But I think, you brought up the contractor thing. And I think a lot of times when we outsource work in our businesses, people have a tendency to let these experts, air quotes around that, bulldoze them into doing it the way they want to do it rather than the way that the entrepreneur wants it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, you've really, like you're saying, you've got to step up for yourself. And there's a little phrase that I've kind of I've stolen and then revamped it a bit, but it's be bold, be brief, be brilliant.
Be
and
bold.
The first part of that.
Be bold, be brief, be brilliant. Love
yes.
that.
And the first part of that is be bold. If they're trying to bulldoze you, no one is going to stand up for you but you, particularly in an entrepreneurial space. So you've got to be bold.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. You have to be bold. But what does bold look like to people? Bold to people, some people looks very different. I know I have this conversation a lot with clients. When I call them powerhouse mavericks, that I'm, hoping to help you transform into a powerhouse maverick, and I deem them to be bold. And then
right.
they actually start retreating because they get all kind of in their head about, oh my God, what is that? What does that mean to me? And the risks I need to take. So what is a bold leader look like to you?
I think the first thing you've got to be able to do is turn off the noise. With any task, even something simple like launching a website, it's pretty cut and dry what you've got to get done.
Yeah.
But what people have a tendency to do is they look at all the things this website's going to touch and they try and affect those things simultaneously as they launch the website. That stuff's just noise right now.
Yeah.
You've got to narrow your focus and pull the trigger on the one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to move you forward.
Right.
But from a corporate perspective, when people are getting the boss is walking in and throwing a bunch of stuff on your desk, and it doesn't matter if it's a, mid-level boss or a senior level boss, and you're a mid-level, manager or a senior level manager, it gets hard to cull it down to being narrow in what it is that you're doing, let alone an entrepreneur who, let's say that they're on their own, they're a solopreneur, but they do contract. It's really, really hard for them to all of a sudden look at their to-do list and say, okay, I'm only going to work on this one thing.
Right.
So, what do you suggest? How do you go about kind of getting them to have that focus and have that narrow view to prove to themselves that should they take this perspective, that they can actually get more done in less time? How do you go about helping them to understand that?
That is a fabulous question because there's two big facets to it. I mean, number one, and this in your work, not everyone does it the same way. And so for me, I would rather climb the mountain first and then do the gardening later. I want the hard thing done first. Because when you're looking at this list of tasks, they may all have an equivocal impact on your business as a whole. So it makes it difficult to figure out which one takes priority. So for me, hard one first.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks, they like to do that, snowball effect where they do the little one all the way up to the hard one. So the first step is figuring out how that individual or that client works best. And then after that, it's okay. So if these are all balls we're juggling, which one's going to blow up if I drop it?
Yeah. 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 And therefore, which one can I really focus on and get done and get the impact and the result to where then I feel confident and more secure that I can then move on to the next thing, as opposed to trying to do, I always talk about with my clients, that I'd rather have you get really narrow and very deep in accomplishing something than I'm not impressed if you were to bring me kind of a laundry list of things that you're picking at and you're working at, but you're not getting any of it done.
Right.
I mean, that just, that doesn't impress me when someone, is like, oh, well, here's my to-do list for the week. And it's this long honey-do list. And I'm like,
I mean, let's be real. I would rather you get two things done optimally than 30 things done half-assed.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. I agree. I absolutely agree. I am looking for my other headset and I can't seem to put my hand on it. But I absolutely agree. And it's definitely one of those things where if you want to step forward as a leader, then you need to not only get yourself very mastered in doing that narrow and deep focus, but remember, employees are like kids and the boss is like the parent. The employee is going to follow your lead. That's the whole point of being a leader. And therefore you have to demonstrate what you want them to be doing and how they want to be acting and behaving. And therefore you need to grasp some of these concepts as the leader. So then others, your employees or even your peers and even your bosses can then, kind of follow that lead and replicate it.
Yeah, because, just to your point, human beings will get away with anything they're allowed to get away with. It's just how we are. And anything that you exhibit as a behavior from a leadership perspective, you are then giving your team permission to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, little stupid stuff. Like I'll use an anecdote from the military. They gave us pants with 15 pockets on them. You can't put your hands in your pockets. Yeah. Let that one burn your brain up for a minute. But it's a true story. And so as a leader, even though I am a pocket enthusiast, I can't stand in front of people with my hands in my pockets because then I'm giving them permission to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So you have to exemplify the behaviors you want them to emulate.
Right. That's a that's a perfect example. A perfect example.
It's terrible. It's so stupid.
It's so simple, right? But yet, it's so powerful, and yet so many people don't get it.
Right.
They don't get it, and they don't recognize that. However, they're walking around the office or executing on what it is that they need to get done. Their people may not be. What do I want to say? It's not as if they're like gazing, into their soul, but they're watching all that surface behavior. And it's almost like they're also listening to the words being used and how they're being used and whatnot. And therefore you can't blame anybody else for the way that your team behaves because you're allowing it through your own actions, through your own words, through your own behavior.
And truthfully, you and I have both had clients in that corporate leadership space.
Right.
And I know that we both had clients that have been like, here's my team. I don't know what's wrong with them. And you spend a little time observing. You're like, well, I can tell you what's wrong, Playboy. All the things you're showing them are okay. They're doing.
Right. Right. Yep. Absolutely. So, don't be surprised.
Right.
Don't be surprised.
And now it's hard for folks to like step out and look objectively at what they're doing and say, okay, maybe I have some ownership in this because, ego is gnarly, especially when you're the leader. And so you think, oh, I'm infallible. No, you're not. You mess up like everybody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And trust me, I think both of us know, but I certainly know how hard it is to finally look in the mirror and see clearly, the warts, the beauty marks, the pains, the joys, what I call the bitches and the riches. And it's hard to kind of come face to face. As a matter of fact, I was writing for somebody I'm working with right now. I was writing my story, and I was writing it from the viewpoint of getting into all the mess, like all those feelings, emotions, those beliefs of my story. And and trust me, I've been sitting here this morning writing it for about 2 hours, and I'm just like. Although I'm happy that I'm past it and moved on from it. But at the same time, I think you would agree that it's the kind of the best way that a leader can really understand the impact that they're having, good, bad, or indifferent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's funny? Like, so you brought up that you're writing this thing and it's a little arduous but it's not stopping you from finishing it, right? No. And that's another thing that I think people screw up on, and it happens a lot in the entrepreneurial space, is because you have ultimate control over your schedule, you excuse yourself, you freedom yourself out of completing things a lot of times.
Yes.
And one of the things that I kind of stress to my entrepreneurial clients is like, it sounds a little morbid, but I call it cradle to the grave accomplishment. So like if you start it, cradle to the grave accomplishment.
Okay.
So like start it and see it all the way through. It's going to get hard in the middle. It's going to get hard towards the end, but just don't stop. And I'm not saying don't take breaks from it, but people do that all the time where they're working on, in our world, someone's working on a mini course or trying to launch this or that or the other thing. And when it gets hard, like, okay, well, I'll stop on that and work on this other thing. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Finish what you're doing and then move on.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to your analogy of, you'd rather climb the mountain first because that's the hard part.
Right.
Than to, kind of, find the path, of which then you'd have to climb. So you'd rather do the hard part first than to do the easy stuff. Because the hard part, I just happened to have a post about this the other day. The hard part's not going away.
No.
You still are going to have to face it. You're still going to have to do it. So why delay it or avoid it or ignore it? But yet at the same time, I say that so confidently and sternly. And I can hark back to when I was writing my book and Shedding the Corporate Bitch, just as a reminder. And I kind of, all of a sudden my editor's like, and I had an editor from day one, and all of a sudden she's like, hey, where are you? We need to meet. We need to talk. We need to talk. And I'm like, after a while I was like, what's wrong? She's like, meet me at the Chick-fil-A down the street from your house. We need to talk. I'm like, okay, all right. And
Universal meeting spot.
Yeah, right. Right. And all of a sudden she's like, so why aren't you writing? I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, I'm writing. She's like, I haven't seen pages in like 2 months. Why aren't you writing? What's gotten in your way? I'm like, nothing's gotten in my way. No, I'm good. I'm just busy. She's like, that's BS.
Right.
And so she drilled into, just like what we do as coaches, drilled in with a bunch of other questions. And she kind of uncovered for me the fact that I was at a place in the story that was difficult. And it was difficult for me to tell. It was difficult for me to expose. It was difficult for me to confront. And therefore, I didn't. I kind of put it on the shelf and kind of kept myself busy, doing something else. And just like what we're saying, she's like, you got to hit that mountain. You got to tackle that mountain first.
And that's the thing, when you're doing the hard stuff first is, would you rather do the hard thing when you're fresh or when you've done 10 little things and now you're depleted anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's actually a really good point. No, when you have all the fuel and the energy and the momentum, get that hard thing done.
Definitely.
Yeah, get that hard thing done. Now, I know when we came up with the subject of stepping forward, the one thing that I thought about as it related to this subject is that many leaders hesitate to step forward because they're comfortable in in being the doer. They're comfortable in them doing the work. They can do it better. They can do it faster. They can, do it, more effectively, whatever the case might be. And yet leadership is all about kind of stepping back and transferring the responsibility and the ownership and the opportunity to their people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And do you see that a lot with the clients that you work with, that they're much more comfortable, kind of in the background as opposed to in the front? Because in the front means, I have to let go of control.
I'm going to totally throw you off.
Okay.
And ask that we pin that question because Ari would like to say something in Clubhouse.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You got the board, so you're able to see who's there. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And so, like, brief recap, Ari, that's awesome. Thank you. For the folks in the stream, Ari's talking about, she gave us a story about how she's not put the sprinkler heads on her sprinkler system yet to automate it. And so every day she's out there watering with a hose, and kind of bringing back the point of like leadership delegation. And I would like to point out, leaders suck at delegating. It is one of the things that kills. I mean, it's a fact. People are horrible delegators because you sometimes, like, it's got a lot to do with trust of your team. It's got a lot to do with, ego from time to time, but really it's about, like, you don't have the faith in yourself or them. So you'd rather just do it yourself. And that is a massive detriment to everybody.
Yeah. I'd like to use a more in your face word than faith.
Ooh, hit it.
Well, you said the word, but you don't trust not only yourself, but you don't trust that other people can do it. And if they can do it, they can't do it as good or as fast or whatever the case might be. Trust.
And why is that? Why is it that you don't trust them? Because you haven't trained them. You suck as a leader.
It's true. No, that's a great point. I was going to ask.
If you knew that they knew what you knew the way you know it,
yep,
you would have no doubt in your mind. You would delegate no problem.
Right.
But again, like we're talking about being present, you'll never know the strengths and weaknesses of your team and where to fill in those gaps if you're sitting in your office.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. And at the same time, I would say that, and then if Ari's still there, we can ask, get her input on this. But I also find that a lot of leaders, and we're giving them credit by calling them leaders when they're actually not leading.
Yeah, I'm impressed you're not using air quotes.
But we'll go with leader. They're not good at coaching. They're not good at mentoring. They're not good at teaching. They'd rather just, kind of dictate or direct or demand. And they don't have they're not taking the patience to teach and mentor and coach. So what do you do with your clients, Travis, as far as helping them recognize and helping to teach them how they can go about coaching and mentoring and teaching their people?
And for a lot of these folks, that's one of those mountains we were talking about. That's a really hard thing for them to do. And typically the reason it's so difficult for them is they're stuck in the construct of time. There's just not time to do it. There's just not time. And the reality is, like, let's say you have a 10 of team individuals and you pull one during one shift or whatever, however many days it takes to spin them up on 2 or 3 of these subtasks that you're doing all the time that really could be passed off to your team.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've empowered them with all this knowledge and they can go back out to their team and train the trainer. I mean, it's too easy. And so it just showed them, like, flash to bang, you're going to buy yourself a ton of white space if you just climb the mountain now. And it's not going to be anything different than you're doing already. If you're the one doing the task already, cool. Bring them along with you. Let them shadow.
Yep.
And then they'll be able to inculcate all the things that you know and empower the rest of the team.
Amen. Yes, absolutely. And I think what I would tell my clients is, and we talk about kind of disciplines and routines and habits that a leader should have. And one of them I'm huge on is time blocking. So what I will suggest to my clients is to time block. I don't care if it's even like a half hour. I'd prefer like an hour or more, but even if it's a half hour, time block every day, time to kind of knowledge transfer, even if it's knowledge transfer onto a piece of paper,
sure,
of which then you're going to then sit down with either one member or your team to then be able to, kind of transfer that task, that skill to somebody else. But spend at least a half hour considering, what in my everyday can I be kind of, delegating and transferring off and passing to somebody else, so I can actually be the leader and not be the doer.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Did you want to weigh in on that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I agree 1 bazillion%. I mean, you're 1,000% right. Like, in-state is what matters. It's so, I used to, something stupid, but like vehicle layouts, like equipment layouts, we had to do constantly in the military. And I would lay things out a certain way. And we're talking like 200 pieces of equipment over, so 4 vehicles, so about 1,000 pieces of equipment laid out, and you need to lay it out identical. Each vehicle has to be laid out exactly the same way, but there's no blueprint for this. And so I grew up in the military doing it a particular way. But when I was a platoon sergeant, I was like, I don't care how you do it, as long as they look the same. And that's the thing that you're absolutely right, Ari. Like, a lot of folks will get tied into the minutia of, no, that thing goes there and that thing goes there. But does it? Is there anything that says it has to go that way? Or are we just worried about getting it done to standard?
Right. Yep. Well, and I think that goes back to your comment about ego, people's egos, people's stubbornness gets in the way of, well, it's always worked this way, or it's always,
gross. But I hate that answer to any question.
Right.
That's how we've always done it, is the dumbest, laziest response.
Well, lazy is a good one. It is a lazy response that this is the way it's always been done. And that's kind of majority of what I find.
And when you do that, you are stifling innovation. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, the doer level changes. You may be 3 years removed from the doer level of things. And so when you're down there saying, no, this is how you do it, man, widget A may not go into slot B anymore, killer. And maybe the doer knows more than you about the task. And so if you give them a little left and right maneuverability to say, yeah, but it works better this way and we achieve the same goal, then run, let them go.
Yep. Well, and that was one of the questions I definitely wanted to raise up and get your thoughts on, Travis, because I think the business environment has changed drastically of how we do things and how things will get done over the past 12, 15 months as a result of everything that's been going on in the world. And I think it's going to really put a spotlight on those leaders that are either adapting to the changes and letting go of the way that things, were done in the past, and allowing innovation and allowing change and allowing adaption to those that are just stuck with their heels in the sand and they won't budge.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, it shed a lot of light on a lot of things that everyone thought was, quote, necessary. And now we go, oh, okay, we were wasting a lot of time. Yeah. And that's one of the most glaring things that we've seen is, everything has gotten so streamlined over the last 18 months. And as much as, stuff like what we're doing right now wasn't really a thing 18 months ago. And everything we do is via Zoom. You're working with people all over the country. And so I think, to your question though, I think what's going to happen is the ones who have their heels stuck in the sand are going to have a very rude awakening. Their bottom lines are going to suffer, because when you stifle innovation, we've talked about it before, people will lose money to leave a crummy boss.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yep. And they will
lose. If you feel like you're stuck in a spot where there's no room for growth personally or professionally, why are you going to stick around?
Yeah. I'm almost, what's coming to my mind is this commercial, and I can't even think of the brand, which isn't a good thing, but the scenario of the commercial is real life small business owners, and one's a bicycle shop. And so they made these custom leisure bikes. And when the pandemic hit, it dried up. But then because people couldn't come into their shop because they're custom made. And so then they kind of pivoted. They recognized that they needed a pivot. And they found a way. Oh, it's for Microsoft Teams. So I'm doing a shout out to Microsoft Teams. But so that's the commercial. And so they are, so then they say, well, we had to adapt and we had to build a whole new system and process for being able to use, Microsoft Teams or online to still customize a bike to one of our customers, And the comment that I'm getting to though is he ends this scenario in the commercial with, "This has changed the way retail will be done in the future."
Sure.
And it has. I mean, we will see a lot more than we already have, sadly. Brick and mortar going away because now people have adapted to being able to be online and do it virtually. And therefore the leader needs to be able to step forward and recognize that, admit it, and figure out, how they're going to adjust to it.
And, to the point of that whole thing is I'd be willing to bet there was a room full of people and they espoused this problem set, and someone in that room full of people came up with that idea.
Sure.
It probably wasn't the leader. And that happened for me all the time in my life where, man, we've got this issue. Who's got a plan?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, particularly in a leadership perspective, you miss the forest for the trees. You get so tunnel vision on end state that you miss all these different avenues of approach. Mm-hmm. And so you just say, see the hill, take the hill, see the hill, take the hill. And someone's like, hey, we could probably just go around the hill. Like, oh, that's a way better idea.
Well, and this brings me to even a bigger concept that I coach on a regular basis. That is a segue from what you just said. Leaders need to ask questions such as, does anybody have a new idea or a suggestion of how we can do things differently or better? Excuse me, I lost my phone. And they need to be able to, ask questions as opposed to expecting that as a leader, they always have to make the statements. They always have to give the directive. They always have to have the direction. It's most likely, like you said, someone on their team is going to help them get where they need to go a lot more effectively and efficiently. But the leader has to ask, because a lot of times employees just sit back and are like, especially if it's a leader that doesn't accept and aren't open to ideas and suggestions and recommendations. So the leader needs to learn how to ask questions.
It also causes a massive paradigm shift in that team. I can tell you the most powerful statement I ever heard from a leader was my battalion commander. Years and years ago, he said, I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. And it was one of the things, it was this massive problem set we were facing. And we all thought, okay, he's going to give us the answer. He's got 800 infantry soldiers ready to hear the answer. And he's like, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. Yep. And like just the sense of empowerment that gave us at the lowest level, like, okay, we're all in this together. Let's figure this thing out. And it didn't, innovation was through the roof. We were coming up with things on our off time, how to make it better. Like you get massive buy-in from your team when you can show a little humility and take input. Yep.
Buy-in is a beautiful, beautiful thing, not to be overlooked.
100%. Yeah. And it was one of those things that I could get deep into it, but it really, that bled through the entire organization. Everyone at every level of leadership owned that we're in this together. We're going to figure it out. And so it made it so that not every idea is actionable, but there's no idea that's not worth looking at if it makes sense in the moment.
Yep. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. So if we were to, we could talk about this, forever, but right. But if you were to say to a client of yours, entrepreneurial or corporate, who is struggling, and maybe they're open with you, or you recognize that they are struggling with stepping forward, kind of what is the one or 1, 2, 3 things that you would suggest that they just start focusing on right now? So our listeners and viewers can say, all right, I'm in the same boat, and these are some simple things that I could be doing to stepping forward.
So I think one of the issues is, and I want to address it first. I think a lot of times when doesn't matter how long you've been in whatever position, some folks are just timid. Some folks are afraid to speak up and take that spot. And this is something I could tell you the genesis story, but I won't get into it. But it was when I had to start doing public speaking on a regular basis when I was still in the military. And I was a little nervous because I'm getting ready to stand in front of like 1,500 people. And what if I screw up? And all those self-doubt things. Like, the brilliant thing, if you're addressing an audience or your team, they have no idea what you're going to say or how you're going to say it. It's impossible for you to screw this up as long as you get the messaging out. So don't be afraid to step forward, first of all.
Right.
And then the other thing, the one that I would really want to say is just get the hell out of your own way. You know, don't worry about your way or the highway. Because even in entrepreneur, like, you know, how many times have you seen with your clients in the entrepreneurial space where the thing's not perfect, so they won't hit go on it? Like, oh, you're killing me, Smalls. Like, you're wasting your time and everyone else's. Like, I would rather put it out. If I don't look back at something I do 2 months from now and think it sucks, then I'm not growing, right?
Yeah.
So just go. Don't be afraid. Just hit go on it and then continue to refine and improve.
Yeah. Imperfect perfection.
Exactly.
Imperfect perfection. But at the same time, they're using their need for perfection as a security blanket, as an excuse.
Excuse. You almost said our word, but it's not a reason.
Right. As an excuse to not put themselves out there because of their fear and because of their insecurity. And so, I love that. You just have to do it. Just do it.
Do it scared. Go for it.
Yeah. Be scared. Be uncomfortable. The one that I would bring up, I would suggest to somebody is to, because I'm huge on the ask questions, is to be okay with, as you grow, you are not going to know everything. You shouldn't have to know everything. That's why you have a team.
Right.
And whether they work directly for you or whether you're, dotted lined or whether they're contractors and consultants, you have a team because of the fact that it's the whole of the team that's going to know everything. It's not one person. And just because you might be, hierarchically at the top of that doesn't mean that you're supposed to know everything. I would share a lot of times with corporate clients that I would have who are working with me to advance in their career. And, it's sad because, and we all know, women wait until they're like 80, 90% ready, whereas men only wait until they're like 30% ready to ask for the next job. So I would challenge my client and say, but if you already knew everything you were supposed to know about that job, then aren't you selling yourself short to go for that advancement? You should go for the next one.
Right.
And they'd be like, oh, I didn't consider that. So I just think that I suggest a lot around just ask questions and become very curious and very, open-minded about what it is that you could be doing differently in your business, even in your role, and, engage everybody in the process. And they're going to love feeling valued and contributing and, being heard and seen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Any last thoughts from, and even Ari, if you have her still there, any last thoughts on this subject?
Awesome.
How about you, Travis?
I think I'm good. I mean, I think we could probably keep going, but then people are going to be like, okay, we get it.
Right. Well, and I think next week we're going to be talking about back planning.
Ooh, my favorite thing on the planet.
And
speaking my love language.
Yeah, I figured as much. And so when I kind of was starting to look at that, I thought, okay, so a lot of these themes of what we've been talking about, will carry nicely over into the next conversation. And so we can always, begin to expand or retract however we need to. Make sense?
So buckle up next for back, friend. It's going to be great.
And I just want to remind everybody too that you can tune in live every week at 1:00 right here on Clubhouse, or we are streaming on YouTube and Facebook on A Shift to Riches Today, those pages. So you can go to both Facebook and YouTube to check this one out and see our smiley faces, as much as seeing or hearing our beautiful deep voices, because we both tend to have deep voices. All right. Then Ari, thank you for joining. That was awesome.
Yes, awesome input.
Yeah, me too.
Likewise.
Yeah, me too. All right, everybody. Until next week, we will talk with you soon. Go and kick ass as a leader.
That's right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.